This happened in the fall of 2019, and even now I still think about it every time I hear a foghorn or see a thick layer of fog rolling in from the ocean. I've spent most of my life around boats. My father was a commercial fisherman for nearly 20 years, and growing up along the Oregon coast meant I learned how to navigate the water before I even learned how to drive. Because of that, I've never been the type of person to get nervous on the ocean. At least I wasn't before this happened. The trip was supposed to be simple. My dad and I had planned a weekend crabbing trip near a remote section of coastline about an hour south of Astoria. We'd done similar trips dozens of times before. The weather forecast mentioned heavy morning fog, but that wasn't unusual for that area. We arrived Friday night and camped near a small boat launch that locals occasionally used. The area was completely deserted. No other campers, no parked vehicles, nothing. Just us and the sound of distant waves breaking somewhere beyond the darkness. The fog started rolling in sometime after midnight. When I woke up the next morning around 5:30, I could barely see 20 feet beyond the tent. The world looked completely white. The trees were just shadows. The shoreline was invisible. Even the air felt strange, quiet, heavy, like the fog wasn't just blocking visibility but swallowing sound itself. Dad didn't seem concerned. He'd spent most of his life working in conditions far worse than this. After breakfast, we loaded our gear into the boat and launched shortly after sunrise. For the first hour, everything felt normal. We checked crab pots we'd placed the previous day and moved slowly through the water while drinking coffee from thermoses. The ocean was calm, almost unnaturally calm. No wind, no waves, no birds, just fog, endless fog. Around 8 o'clock that morning, I heard something. A metallic bell, clang. A few seconds passed, clang, then again, clang. At first, I didn't think much about it. Navigation buoys often have bells attached to them. The movement of the water causes them to ring. The sound can travel surprisingly far over open water. I pointed it out to Dad. He nodded. Probably a buoy. That seemed reasonable enough. But 20 minutes later, the bell was still ringing. Exactly the same. Same volume, same timing, no change whatsoever. That was odd. If we were moving and the buoy remained stationary, the sound should have changed. It should have become louder or quieter. Instead, it remained exactly the same distance away, almost as if it were moving with us. Neither of us mentioned it again, but I could tell Dad had noticed it too. Around 8:45, we changed course. The bell remained. Around 9 o'clock, we changed direction again. The bell remained. No matter where we went, it stayed with us. Always somewhere out there in the fog. Never closer, never farther away. Eventually, the sound became impossible to ignore. Dad finally looked over at me. That's strange. Those two words immediately made me uncomfortable. My father wasn't someone who admitted when something bothered him. If he thought it was strange, then it genuinely was. By that point, the fog had become even thicker. Visibility was probably less than 30 feet. I remember looking out across the water and feeling like we were floating inside a cloud. The ocean and sky had become indistinguishable. There was no horizon, no reference points, nothing, just white. Then something changed. The bell got louder. Not dramatically louder, just enough for both of us to notice. Clang, clang, clang. Dad cut the engine. Instant silence, except for the bell. The sound echoed through the fog. Metallic, rhythmic, unsettling. We listened for nearly a minute. Then I noticed something. A shape. At first I thought it was my imagination. A darker patch inside the fog. But then it moved. Slowly, barely visible. I pointed toward it. Dad followed my gaze. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. A boat. A small wooden rowboat. It drifted silently through the fog, maybe 70 yards away. The thing looked ancient. Dark wood. No visible markings, no motor, no lights, no fishing gear. Just a weathered rowboat floating in open water. And someone was sitting inside it. At least I thought someone was. A dark figure sat motionless near the center. The fog shifted. The boat disappeared. Gone, just like that. Neither of us moved. The bell continued ringing. Clang, clang, clang. Dad restarted the engine. "Let's head back." That surprised me. My father never cut trips short. Ever. But I didn't argue. We turned toward shore. The bell followed. For the next 30 minutes, we traveled steadily toward land. The entire time, the bell remained somewhere nearby. Always hidden, always present. Then another sound appeared. Splash, pause, splash, pause, splash. The unmistakable sound of oars entering water. Both of us heard it immediately. Someone was rowing. The rhythm was slow, steady, almost mechanical. I turned around. Nothing, only fog. The rowing continued. Splash, pause, splash, pause, splash. The sound stayed behind us, matching our speed perfectly. I remember calling out, "Hello." No response, only the oars. Dad called out next. Still nothing. Whoever was out there didn't answer, didn't react, didn't even acknowledge us. The rowing simply continued. By now my stomach had tied itself into knots. Every instinct told me something wasn't right. The sound followed us for nearly 20 minutes. Then suddenly it stopped. No gradual fade. No indication that the boat had turned away. 1 second it was there. The next it wasn't. Silence. Complete silence. And that's when the fog finally began lifting. Slowly at first, then rapidly. Visibility expanded from 30 feet to 100, then 200. Soon we could see a significant portion of the water around us. There was no boat, no rowboat, no fisherman, no kayaker, nothing. The water was completely empty. I searched every direction. Dad did the same. Neither of us found anything. The shoreline eventually appeared ahead. Relief washed over me. I just wanted to be back on land. We reached a narrow sandy beach and pulled the boat ashore. For several minutes, neither of us said anything. Then Dad pointed toward the sand. Footprints, bare footprints, fresh ones, leading out of the water. Not toward it, out of it. The impressions looked recent enough that water still glistened inside them. The tracks traveled along the beach for several yards before turning toward the tree line. I stared at them, confused. There were no signs of a boat, no drag marks, no kayak, nothing. Just footprints emerging directly from the ocean. Dad didn't seem interested in investigating. Neither was I. Something about those tracks felt deeply wrong. We loaded our equipment into the truck and prepared to leave. As I closed the tailgate, I glanced toward the forest. That's when I saw someone standing between the trees. A figure, tall, motionless, watching us. I blinked. The figure stepped backward, then disappeared into the darkness beneath the trees. I immediately turned to tell Dad, but when we looked again, nothing was there. The drive home was unusually quiet. Neither of us wanted to discuss what we'd experienced. That evening I checked the GPS logs from our boat. Something about the data bothered me. For nearly 40 minutes, the GPS showed us moving in a straight line. Yet according to the recorded coordinates, we had barely changed position. At first I assumed the device had malfunctioned, but the backup GPS showed the exact same thing. I've spent years trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. Maybe there was another boat hidden by the fog. Maybe sound traveled in strange ways. Maybe the GPS units malfunctioned. Maybe the footprints belonged to someone who'd landed earlier. Maybe the figure in the trees was just a trick of the light. Maybe. But what bothers me most is something I didn't mention earlier. A few days after the trip, I called a local harbor office while trying to identify the old rowboat we'd seen. The man I spoke with listened patiently before asking me a strange question. He asked whether the boat had a bell. I told him yes. There was a long pause. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You're not the first person who's reported hearing that bell." Before I could ask what he meant, he changed the subject completely. The conversation ended shortly afterward. I've never gotten an explanation, and I've never returned to that section of coastline. To this day, whenever fog rolls across the ocean and I hear a distant bell somewhere out in the white emptiness, I think about that boat, and I wonder who or what was rowing it. This happened during the spring of last year while I was mountain biking in Colorado. I had ridden the same trail dozens of times before. It was a simple route that looped through a forested area before reconnecting with a paved road. Late that afternoon, a thick fog rolled in unexpectedly. I wasn't worried. I knew the trail well. About an hour into the ride, I crossed a small wooden bridge. A few minutes later, I crossed it again. Same bridge, same broken railing, same fallen tree beside it. At first, I assumed I had accidentally taken a wrong turn, but there weren't any intersections on that trail. I continued riding. 10 minutes later, I reached the bridge for a third time. That's when I started getting nervous. I checked my GPS. The screen was glitching badly, showing impossible movements and constantly changing directions. Then I heard another bicycle behind me. The sound was unmistakable. Tires rolling over dirt, a chain rattling, someone pedaling. I looked back. No one was there. The sound continued. Every time I sped up, it sped up. Every time I slowed down, it slowed down. Eventually, I rounded a bend and saw a figure standing ahead in the fog. It was extremely tall, far taller than any normal person. At first, I thought it was a tree. Then it moved. The figure slowly tilted its head toward me. The bicycle sound stopped instantly. I turned around and rode harder than I ever had in my life. A few minutes later, I burst out onto the main road. The fog began clearing almost immediately. The sounds were gone. The figure was gone. The next day, I reported the incident to a park ranger. After listening to my story, he told me something that still bothers me. A mountain biker had disappeared in that same area the week before. They never found him. In 2022, I was working as a long-haul truck driver. One night, I was hauling freight across a remote stretch of Nevada highway. It was around 2 a.m., and I hadn't seen another vehicle in nearly half an hour. That's when I passed a small gas station, sitting alone beside the road. The place looked old. A flickering neon sign, 2 fuel pumps, a red pickup truck parked near the building. I remember noticing it because it seemed completely out of place. I kept driving. About 40 minutes later, I saw the same gas station again. At least I thought it was the same one. Same neon sign, same red pickup, same cracked parking lot. I figured there must have been several stations that looked similar. Then I passed it a third time. That's when panic started setting in. There was no way I should have been driving in circles. The highway had been completely straight. I finally decided to pull over. The station looked abandoned. No lights inside, no employees, nothing. As I approached the entrance, I noticed something written on the dusty glass door. Someone had traced the words with a finger. "You missed your exit!" I immediately got back into my truck and left. The feeling I had standing there is difficult to describe. It felt like someone was watching me. The next morning, after reaching my destination, I reviewed my dashcam footage. The gas station appeared only once, not 3 times, just once. According to the recording, I never stopped. I still have no explanation for what happened that night.